Gen Alpha doesn't have a good reputation, and a new phenomenon with this generation is the iPad kid stereotype, which is exactly what it sounds like. Kids, young toddlers even, spending all their free time consuming brain-rot content on a tablet or smartphone, which is believed to cause or at least contribute to a lot of the problems they have, including behaviour problems, short attention spans, restlessness, and difficulties with reading and spelling, which teachers have been reporting on platforms like TikTok. While it's easy to poke fun at Gen Alpha, the reality is quite sad, and I feel people tend to put more blame on the kids rather than the parents. Yes, the older Gen Alpha kids should know how to behave and take responsibility for their actions, but ultimately it's the parents who introduce kids to this lifestyle. I also feel that the media, especially American media, makes the problem seem worse than it really is, by cherry-picking extreme examples and using them to represent the average Gen Alpha, the average modern kid. Even if we assume it's super common, humiliating them doesn't solve the problem and it just ruins their self-esteem. So why would a parent give their young child an iPad? Is it just lazy parenting? Well, maybe it is. A lot of parents see it as a convenient short-term solution to keep them entertained. Just give a kid an iPad and they'll shut up. But short-term solutions can have long-term consequences. The problem with devices like iPads is they provide limitless entertainment with little to no participation when compared to traditional toys. I bring this up because toys aren't just a form of entertainment for children, they're an important part of their development. If you give a kid a box of random Lego or some cheap art supplies, there's a lot they can do with that. They don't do much on their own, but instead act as a canvas for kids to create things rather than just consume things. Maybe they make a house, a monster, or a spaceship, for example. Lego also teaches kids about problem solving, patience, and helps them develop motor skills. Okay, well that's all good, but how come us Gen Zs didn't have it as bad when we were little? After all, we grew up with the internet as well. Well, here's what it was like for me. For a bit of context, I'm currently 20 years old, so that should give you a rough idea of when I was born. Technology wasn't a huge aspect of my early childhood. I didn't get my own mobile phone or computer until I was about 9 or 10 years old. Even then, the computer was a crappy old netbook, and the phone was just a cheap feature phone from the supermarket. So up until then, I could only use one of the family computers, and I spent a lot of my free time at after-school clubs, at the park, playing in the garden, or playing with toys. So there was still a lot for me to do without technology, whereas nowadays the internet is sort of like the bedrock of people's lives. I had a few game consoles, but my mum was strict about me not playing violent games like COD or GTA, so at home I mostly played single-player games, which were fun, but they weren't the kind of games you could play constantly. We also didn't have streaming services or short-form content. If I wanted to watch something, I had to wait until it came on TV, unless I pre-recorded an episode or I had it on DVD. To be honest, I'm kinda grateful for having basic technology as a kid, because it forced me to be creative if I was bored. As a kid, I wanted to be an animator because I liked animation and storytelling. So I tried making my own cartoon series on a Packard Bell desktop with no internet access. I'd write the script in Notepad, draw the frames in Microsoft Paint, and edit it in Windows Movie Maker. Were the animations any good? No, they weren't, but it was educational and genuinely fun. To summarise, I grew up in an era where it wasn't common for kids to have smart devices and the internet wasn't as stimulating. Back then, the internet was almost like an art gallery. People would make animations and flash games that they'd publish to websites like YouTube and Newgrounds. The content we consumed wasn't designed to monetize our attention, and we had plenty of memories without technology in our early childhood. Now, we did have brain rot content in the 2010s, for example MLG and YouTube Poops, but even brain rot was different back then. YouTube Poops were random and a lot of people thought they were cringe, but they at least had a coherent plot. People put a lot of hard work into these videos knowing they will get demonetized, whereas the average YouTube Kids creator is swimming in ad revenue. Also, we weren't toddlers when we were watching this stuff, so it didn't impact our early development. Now, there are a few more problems that I feel contribute to the Gen Alpha problem. The first is the idea that kids nowadays are just lazy and don't want to go outside anymore. This is more specific to the United States and Canada, but the problem isn't as simple as kids are just lazy. In reality, it's a combination of bad urban design and overprotective parenting. Fluff Design has a great video about this which I recommend watching, and I'll have a link to it in the description. But in a nutshell, most North American towns and cities lack public transport and aren't safe to walk in. So even if your city has places where kids would want to hang out, like a skate park, a shopping mall or a playground, it could be too far away or too dangerous to walk to. Even if the parents trust their kids and accept the fact there are risks involved, they still might not let them go out on their own because of judgment from other parents or, in extreme cases, legal actions. For example, a mother in Canada was reported to CPS for letting her kids play in their own back garden. British urban design isn't great either, and I want to make a video about that on my second channel, but at least most kids here can get to school on their own. So if you live somewhere that isn't designed for kids, of course they're going to spend time online because that's the limit of their social life outside of school. It's especially hard if you're an only child or you don't blend in with other kids. So a lot of people flock to the internet because that's the only place they can find people who relate to them or have similar interests. The second problem is the need for social validation. This doesn't apply so much to toddlers as much as it applies to older kids and teenagers. In some countries like the US and to a lesser extent the UK, companies like Apple are seen like a prestigious brand, and it's not just an idea in the mind of adults, but also children. Some of you might have heard of the green bubble versus blue bubble drama, which I thought was a joke at first because it sounds so silly, but it's a real thing and kids are affected by it too. There are literally kids who are bullied for not having an iPhone or not having a phone at all. The same goes for other trends like young girls who have been bullied for not having a Stanley Cup. This creates a moral conflict between the parents and the kids. The parents don't want their kids on social media, and for good reason, but they also don't want their kids to be isolated or bullied by their peers, so they end up buying them an iPhone anyway. So with all due respect, I can see why parents would do it. It shouldn't be this way though, and a lot of students feel like their school doesn't take bullying seriously. The reason bullies go unreported is because students know the teachers won't do anything besides tell the student to just ignore the bully. And the third reason is poor education and discipline. I don't know what it's like in the US or the rest of the world, but when I was at school, the internet safety material was very outdated. They showed us the same videos in year 11 as they did in year 3, and they said, if someone is bullying you or you feel unsafe, just click the see op button. For the record, I've never seen the see op button in my life. Also, these videos were really funny because of how badly written they were, so of course nobody was going to take them seriously.
Yes, get in there!
In all seriousness though, there needs to be education on behalf of the parents. My parents weren't great with technology, so their knowledge of internet safety was just based on third-party sources, and they didn't know what measures were actually effective. Thankfully, I didn't encounter any inappropriate content as a young kid, at least nothing too bad. But the point is, us younger generations know what the culture of the modern internet is like. It's easy to turn around and say, oh, the internet is bad, so I'm not going to let my kids use it. Yes, the internet is not a safe place for kids, but you can't shelter them from it, just like how you can't shelter them from the real world. And at some point they will need to start using it. So as a parent, it's your job to inform kids about the risks of the internet and teach them how to use it safely. If you don't want your kid wasting all their free time online, buy them toys and introduce them to hobbies where they can have fun and meet new people. If your kids want to go somewhere and you don't want them going out on their own, you'll have to take them there. I also think it's important for parents to discipline and set boundaries for themselves instead of just blindly telling their kids what to do. If you expect your kids to not use their iPads at the dinner table, they will expect you to not use your phone at the dinner table. That said, with the right education, I don't think technology is inherently bad for kids. In fact, it can even be a good thing, especially if the parents are tech savvy. You can teach your kids how to make stop motion animation using Lego pieces, toy cars and action figures as props. You can teach your kids how to type fast by turning it into a game. If the kids are a bit older and more cyber aware, they can teach themselves skills like how to build a PC or how to program. But these are just my thoughts. I would like to hear your own. With all that said, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and until next time, cheerio.